Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear participants. So, we are going to study verses 30 to 36 from Surah Hamim Sajdah. I'll read out the text and translation. إن الذين قالوا ربنا الله ثم استقاموا تتنزل عليهم الملائكة ألا تخافوا ولا تحزنوا وأبشروا بالجنة التي كنتم توعدون نحن أولياؤكم في الحياة الدنيا وفي الآخرة ولكم فيها ما تشتهي أنفسكم ولكم فيها ما تدعون نزلا من غفور رحيم. On the contrary, those who acknowledge God as our Lord then remain steadfast on it, disregarding all opposition. Angels shall surely descend on them for their assistance on the day of judgment, before the verdict is passed, and say, Now neither show any fear nor sorrow, and accept the glad tidings of the paradise that you used to be promised. We remain your companions in the world, in the life of the world, and are also your companions in the life of the hereafter. The paradise whose glad tidings we are giving you has everything in it which your heart will desire, and has everything that you demand, as a means of entertainment for you from Him, who is very forgiving, ever merciful. So these opening verses that we are going to read today, they actually describe how people who had accepted faith at the hands of Prophet Muhammad and had said, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, and then remained steadfast on it. The way they spent their lives, of course, they suffered a lot, and at the same time, they had to go through a lot of trials and tribulations. Regarding such people, it is said that before judgment is pronounced on the day of judgment, angels will visit them and shall actually tell them inform them of the glad tidings that now very soon they shall be admitted into paradise, the paradise which they were promised. And they also should realize that as far as these angels were concerned, they were their companions in this world. And now that they have arrived before the Almighty in the hereafter, they will remain their companions. So this shows that how angels in this world remain companions to the people who have said yes to the call of Prophet Muhammad. This is specifically and specially for those who had accepted faith in his own times. And it is they who suffered as a result of accepting faith. They passed through many trials. They had to go through a lot of tribulations, but they remain steadfast. So the words that are used here in this verse is summa istaqamu, which means that just did not take the name of God. They just did not say that Allah is our Lord, but they remain steadfast on after saying this. And remaining steadfast after saying this in those times was a very tough scenario. People would be persecuted for this. We know of a lot of instances in which the Quraysh subjected people from the believers to a lot of trials. We know how Bilal suffered. We know how the Ammar ibn Yasir suffered. But then they remain steadfast that they will not associate any partners with God. About them, this verse tells us that on the day of judgment, they will be received. Before even the judgment is pronounced, they will be received by the angels, and they will give them these glad tidings that now your trial period is over. Now the paradise of God awaits you. And they will remind them that in the previous world also they were their companions, and now in this world, when they are going to enter paradise, they will remain their companions. So we can see how the angelic phenomena in this world is also witnessed by those people who say, stay steadfast in the face of adversity. And another thing which is mentioned here with a lot of stress, not only here, it is mentioned elsewhere in the Quran also, that the paradise which is mentioned for the believers, for those who will enter, will have this outstanding and this overwhelming trait that whatever one desires, وَلَكُمْ فِيهَا مَا تَشْتَهِي أَنفُسُكُمْ, that whatever one desires, he will get that thing. He just or she just needs to name it, or even just imagine it, and the thing will be made to appear before that person. And this is one of the biggest gifts that the person can have. And whatever their heart's desire is, whatever their demand is, it shall be fulfilled. And this is called nuzul by the Almighty. Nuzul means this is the first hospitality that shall be shown to such people, that they will be given glad tidings of a paradise in which whatever they demand, whatever they would like, will be given to them. And then it says, وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا مِمَّنْ دَعَا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا وَقَالَ إِنَّنِي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ وَلَا تَسْتَوِي الْحَسَنَةُ وَلَا السَّيِّئَةُ ادْفَعْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ فَإِذَا الَّذِي بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَهُ عَدَاوَةٌ كَأَنَّهُ وَلِيٌّ حَمِيمٌ وَمَا يُلَقَّاهَا إِلَّا الَّذِينَ صَبَرُوا وَمَا يُلَقَّاهَا إِلَّا ذُو حَظٍّ عَظِيمٍ وَإِمَّا يَنزَغَنَّكَ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ نَزْغٌ فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ إِنَّهُ هُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. O Prophet, you are calling them towards God, and whose words can be better than the person who calls people to God and does righteous deeds and says, I am among the obedient. In reality, good and evil are not equal. There is no doubt that these disbelievers of yours are now after evil, but you do that which is good in response to evil. Then you will see the very person between who and yourself there is enmity. It is as if he has become a bosom friend. And remember that this wisdom is acquired only by those who are steadfast, and this wisdom is given to only those who are very fortunate. And if at some instance you feel temptation in your heart from Satan, seek God's refuge. Indeed, it is He who hears and knows. So now, as we know, we've described this earlier on as well, that the Quran is actually a narration of the Prophet's own preaching endeavor and how he presented his words and his call to people and his message to people and how they responded. And now it is being said that who is more goodly in the sight of God than the person who calls towards God and who asks people to come towards God. Of course, this was the trait of all messengers, but in all probability and in all honesty, all people who come for this purpose, who call people to the path of God, should be subsumed under this as well. So the Quran says that there is no better a person than the one who calls people to the message of God. And then, of course, he also says, Innani minal Muslimin, that I am from among the obedient, which means that if I am conveying to you the message of God, it is not just an intellectual exercise, it's a document that has to be obeyed. It's not something that you need to just read and get over with it. But at the same time, whatever the words of the book say, they are to be followed, and hence the word Innani minal Muslimin, which means that I am obedient to this message and I will abide by the rules which are described in this message. And at the same time, we have to make sure and we have to understand that good and evil cannot be equal. So, therefore, if people are after you, they are jealous of you, they would pull your legs, they would try to bring you down in life. The Quran, it is here, it says that if people are bad to you, if they act as your foes, you can turn them into bosom friends. And how is that? The single point agenda which the Quran describes here, which is one of the most outstanding pieces of advice that we can all receive vis-a-vis the Quran, is to always retaliate and respond evil with good. If a person is bad to you, if a person has made all kinds of efforts to harm you, then in response, if you are good to that person, which is, of course, goes towards your moral victory, you are bound to change that the life of that person vis-a-vis the way he behaves towards yourself. So yes, it will take time, and that is why the Quran has said, وَمَا يُلَقَّاهَا إِلَّا الَّذِينَ صَبَرُوا, that this can only be done by people who are steadfast. To respond to bad things, to respond to evil things by goodness, is something which can only be done by people who are steadfast, who have this strong connection with God, because this is what brings them this patience and steadfastness and perseverance. So here is that very beautiful formula which I just referred to, that in one single line the Quran has said that whenever a person is bad to you, he or she behaves in a very, very bad manner, you should return that by goodness. And that, of course, would mean that the minimum thing that would be that you are polite to that person in spite of the evasive measures that he or she might be adopting or have adopted. You are still good to that person. You smile to towards that person when you see that person, or more than that, you encourage that person in his absence or in her absence. You bring out some of the good traits that every person has, and not every person is an embodiment of evil, we know, and even people who are bad, they have good traits. So in order to respond positively to a bad person, another thing that can be done is to present the positive traits that he or she might be having in absentia if the need arises. Similarly, if gifts and presents can be given to such a person, and in short, you are not going to respond in an evil manner, in a bad manner to that person. Yes, at other instances in the Quran, uh, it has been given, I mean, we have been given this allowance and permission that you can respond to evil with an equal measure of evil. And on those occasions also, the Quran has said that those people who still forgo and forgive, وَلَمَنْ صَبَرَ وَغَفَرَ إِنَّ ذَلِكَ مِنْ أَزْمِ الْأُمُورِ, that those who forgive and stay steadfast, for these are great matters of resolve, then this is something which has been presented as a positive point. But at the same time, there are instances in which a person needs to take equal amount of retaliation or revenge, then the Quran has said that is allowed. But here, is, in particular, it is said that if you want a single point formula to change a foe into a friend, then respond in a very good manner. And if a person abuses you, you don't abuse him. I mean, you don't abuse back to him. But on the contrary, you try your best to bring out the good points of that person, to be good mannered to that person, and reply with that ill-natured to that ill-natured person with all the goodness that you have. And then the Quran has also said, وَمَا يُلَقَّاهَا إِلَّا ذُو حَظٍّ عَظِيمٍ. Not only is this trait found in those people who are patient and steadfast, but also who are very fortunate. And of course, this refers to the fact that only people who have this trait, they become worthy of being blessed with this God-given trait, that they are able to show patience and steadfastness in the wake of all sorts of harassment and all sorts of evil gestures and evil attitudes that they may face. And then the whole passage ends on these lines of once again warning, which say, وَإِمَّا يَنزَغَنَّكَ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ نَزْغٌ فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ. And if at some instance you feel temptation in your heart from Satan, seek God's refuge. Which means that at some instance you'd like to reply back to that person, and you would like to reply back in a more revengeful manner, because Satan does prompt you that if you are being wronged, you would like to reply with a greater wrong. So this is what is called nazghun by the Quran, a temptation from Satan. The Quran says when this situation arises, fasta'iz billah, seek the refuge of God. Just say, A'udhu Billah, oh God, I come into your refuge, and this will ward off this temptation of Satan. And remember, Innahu huwa Samiul Alim, that God is one who hears and who knows, which means that He hears your invocations, He hears your petitions, and at the same time, He also knows what is in your heart, and you would like to overcome that. So with these words, we come to an end to today's discussion on these verses, and now we can open the forum for Q&A.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad, for guidance and the beautiful explanation of the verses. Our first question will come from Rafia Khwaja. Please unmute your mic and ask your question.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Shehzad. Dr. Shehzad, if you could please guide me, when there is like a serious illness in the house, if one is ill oneself or some catastrophe is going on, one is told that this life is a trial and you must do sabr and you will come closer to God. Could you explain to me how does one get closer to God in suffering, and how does one keep on day after day, face the suffering that is going on due to illness or other reasons?
Well, I mean, this is something which you can learn best from the lives of the prophets of God, who were put into greater trials than we can even imagine. And the attitude that they adopted was that of gratitude, which means that you always look at what you have. Yes, at times the sickness or the illness or the trial that you are passing through could be very tough. But then on the same note and on the same token, you need to also realize that there are a lot of things that you still have and you're still not deprived of, which many people on this planet Earth are deprived of. And the second important thing is that by showing patience to the Almighty, before the Almighty, you are actually acknowledging the fact that I am passing through this trial, and in good times I showed gratitude to you, O God, but it's in these trying and testing times also that I am showing gratitude to you and showing patience, so that it is something which brings our own inner conviction before Him, that it's not just in comforting times that we are happy and we show patience and show gratitude, but also in these tough times we show this gratitude. Also, we do realize that our life hereafter and the reward in the hereafter that we will reap is also dependent on the patience and perseverance that we show in this world. So if we keep reminding ourselves of how other people are deprived, and at the same time also remind ourselves that in the hereafter it is this reward that we will get because of the patience that we are showing in this world. So I think these are the two areas through which we can really assure ourselves and receive consolation.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. Muhammad Shadab, you're next.
सर
Walaikum salam.
मेरा सवाल कुरान की तारीख के मामले में है कि जैसे आयतें अलग अलग नाजिल हुई, फिर ये सूरत के अंदर कैसे मतलब इनको एक ऑर्डर के अंदर करा, और इनके सूरत के नाम और पारों के नाम कैसे हुए?
ये देखें, ये तो एक तफसीली मौजू है, लेकिन इस पर मैंने काफ़ी कुछ लिखा हुआ भी है और लेक्चर्स भी हैं, लेकिन आपको मैं मुख्तसरन बता देता हूँ कि आम तौर से गलतफहमी पाई जाती है कि मुख्तलिफ आयतें नाजिल हुई मुख्तलिफ सूरतों की। ऐसा बहुत कम हुआ है। ज़्यादातर ऐसा हुआ है कि पूरी की पूरी सूरा जो है वो तसलसल के साथ नाजिल हुई है, और नबी सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम को बता दिया जाता था जिब्रील की तरफ से कि ये सूरा अभी चल रही है, और सहाबा कराम ये उनको मालूम होता था कि जब तक बिस्मिल्लाहिर रहमानिर रहीम नहीं आती, जिसका मतलब है कि अब नई सूरा शुरू हो गई है, तो वो पिछली सूरा ही को याद करते थे और उसको लिखते थे। और ये सूरतों के जो नाम हैं ये अल्लाह ताला की तरफ से हैं, जो नाम हरूफ मुक़त्तआत आप जानते हैं, ये सूरतों के दिए हुए नाम हैं। 114 में से जो 29 सूरतें हैं उनमें ये नाम पाए जाते हैं। इसके अलावा जो नाम हैं वो सहाबा कराम के रखे हुए हैं। और जहाँ तक सिपारों का ताल्लुक है तो इसकी ये तकसीम तो नबी सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम के बहुत बाद में हुई है, जब हुफ़ाज़ ने 1 महीने में कुरान ख़त्म करने के बारे में सोचा। अदरवाइज़ जो कुरान की तकसीम हमें मिलती है अव्वलीन तौर पे, वो सिर्फ़ सूरतों के साथ है, और इसी तरह से इसकी तदवीन हुई है और उसके बाद उसकी दूसरी क़िराअत हुई है।
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. I have a question in the chat which says, how can one resolve an existential crisis through religion, especially when one cannot have sabr anymore?
When one cannot have sabr anymore, I mean, this is the case in point in which two diametrically opposite things, they cannot exist together. I mean, if you don't have patience, and when you don't have sabr, you need to analyze why are we bereft of this all important trait, because without this all important trait we just cannot move on in life. So you see, it's more of a philosophical question in which, if you have a God connection, if you have this relationship with God, you will have that inner conviction that whatever adversity that befalls you is from God in some form or the other. It is meant for your own good and betterment. So when adversities come, they are either meant to take you higher, just as we know that adverse currents are meant to fly us higher. At the same time, they are meant to give us inner conviction and inner resolve. At times, they give you an opportunity to come closer to God. And similarly, at times they are a test there are a opportunity which is given to us to revisit some of the priorities in life that we might be having which are wrong. So you see, if you take this whole scenario in which you lose your patience, because you lose your patience generally in those situations in which you get so frustrated that you don't have the will to move on. So instead of being overcome with frustration, you need to understand that patience is the sole weapon that we have in the face of adversity, and this patience can only be obtained through a strong God connection, because it is that support from God that we have from inside, or we can have from inside, is that creates that patience. And there's no better a month that to create patience than this month of Ramadan in which we are passing through. So the fasts themselves, one of the benefits of fasting is that they create patience in ourselves, and they are meant to discipline our soul. So these are some of the things that can be done. Otherwise, if there is a specific situation which the questioner is facing, he or she can directly contact me, and maybe then I'll be able to give a better and a pointed answer.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. Shehbaz Naveed, you're next. Please ask your question.
Assalamualaikum, Dr. Saab. This is slightly off topic, but this was covered, I think, 2 sessions back. Generally, people who we used to love, well, you see, one of my parents, right, they passed away a year and a half back, and obviously we do pray for them separately at every dua. But we also have this in Pakistan, especially. We have these goals, we have a lot of other, barsis and all of that happening on a yearly basis. इसकी कोई significance है in terms of any parent going back, या is it something which only contributes to our goodness?
So you see, the Quran has made it a very, very simple rule. It's the Quran at one occasion says, "Laisa lil insani illa ma sa'a," that a person in the hereafter is going to get only what he or she did in this world, which means that whatever seeds you sow, you'll reap in the hereafter. So if you do something on your parents' behalf, it's not going to reach them; it's in fact going to reach you. But having said that, whatever your parents initiated in their own lifetime, and that is still going on in some form or the other, then that reward will also accrue in their account. So, an example of this would be the children who were educated by their parents, they were instructed, and they were, for example, if they follow some good deed, and the reason for following that good deed is their parents taught them this good deed. So, every time they do that good deed, not only will they themselves be rewarded, but some reward will go to the parents as well, because they were instrumental in making you do that good deed. So this is also what we call as Sadqa Jariya. So Sadqa Jariya actually means that something that is going to continue if the initiation of that thing took place in their own lifetime. So because they were the people who were responsible of educating and instructing you and making you into a good person, so every good deed that they do, that you do, and which actually was a reason that they made it possible for you, for that also they will be rewarded. So other than
Thank
that,
you, Dr.
there is no
Shehzad.
significance of any other gathering of kuls or barsi that we generally are used to.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. Ibad Bhatti, you're next.
Assalamu alaikum. Dr. Shehzad, so we read that wisdom is given only to those who are very fortunate. So my question is that for a person like me, when I read the Quran, I look at tons of interpretations, just like this I'm research karte, we look into many things, right? So I just wanted to ask, sometimes, most of the time, it leaves you confused on what you choose to believe and what not. But the Quran is not, it's not open to interpretation. Maybe it's a command. So where would you recommend you draw the line where you stop using your own mind and listen to what's actually been said?
I think it is the opposite. The Quran is absolutely open to interpretation, which means that whatever you understand from the Quran is what you are liable for. And this understanding can be different for different people. And precisely this is what God wants, that you understand the message of the Quran or a particular verse on the basis of the reasoning that it offers. And the difference of opinion that people might have on a single verse's interpretation is precisely because of this, that they might come to a different conclusion and they might have a different reasoning. So a person who reads the Quran and he finds a particular verse, and if he reads that interpretation from some other tafsir maybe, and also looks at the reasoning of that interpretation, so all that he needs to do is to give preference to one of the interpretations depending upon which reasoning convinces him or her. So basically, it has to be a living and a vibrant relationship in which you are just not, following one interpretation, which of course is one way when you are not, when you don't have the time, or when you are hard pressed with other engagements. But other than that, if you are not satisfied with a particular interpretation, or you think that it doesn't make sense, then you look at other interpretations, and it is the reasoning offered for a particular interpretation that should be actually drawing the line for you.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. Ahmed, you're next.
सर, आपके मुताबिक जिजिया टैक्स नॉन मुस्लिम्स पर इम्पोज नहीं किया जा सकता, लेकिन मुस्लिम्स पर ये फर्ज है कि वो सोसाइटी को सर्व करने के लिए हुक्मरान को ज़कात देंगे, खुम्स देंगे। लेकिन सर, सोसाइटी का हिस्सा तो नॉन मुस्लिम्स भी होते हैं और उन्हें भी सोसाइटल एक्टिविटीज़ के अंदर इन्वॉल्व करना चाहिए। तो हम उन पर उनके कंसेंट के बगैर टैक्स इम्पोज क्यों नहीं कर सकते?
देखिए, जिजिया के बारे में ये अगर आपने पढ़ा हुआ है हमारी तफसील को, और इसमें बहुत सारे जो लेक्चर्स हैं, तो ये आपको जहन में होगा कि इसका ताल्लुक उन नॉन मुस्लिम से हैं कि जो नबी सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम के अपने ज़माने में थे, और उनको सज़ा के तौर पे उन पर जिजिया लगाया गया था हक़ का इनकार करने की वजह से। इसलिए जिजिया तो एक आम टैक्स नहीं है, वो तो एक सज़ा थी जो उन लोगों को दी गई कि जिन्होंने जानते बूझते हुए इनकार किया, तो वो एक सज़ा का मामला था। लेकिन चूँकि उसका ताल्लुक नबी सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम के अपने दौर से था, तो जैसे ही वो ख़त्म हुआ तो जिजिया का मामला जो है असूली तौर पे वो ख़त्म हो जाता है। उसके बाद अब ये होता है कि गैर मुस्लिम जो हैं, जब वो आपके वो शहरी बनते हैं, तो वो किसी न किसी मुआहिदे के तौर पे बनते हैं, और इसी वजह से उनको मुआहिदीन कहा जाता है। تو معاہدین کے معاملے میں جو بھی آپ کی ان کے ساتھ ٹرمز اینڈ کنڈیشنز طے ہوں گی اس کے مطابق معاملہ ہوگا. اگر وہ ٹرمز اینڈ کنڈیشنز یہ ہیں کہ وہ اتنا ٹیکس دیں گے تو وہ جو بھی اگری ہوگا اسی کے مطابق دیں گے, لیکن آپ ان کے اوپر کوئی جبر نہیں کر سکتے, اس لیے کہ اب جس دور میں ہم رہ رہے ہیں وہ قومی ریاستیں ہیں. اب ہم مفتو کر کے کسی کو نہیں اپنے تحت دے کے آ رہے. وہ ایک دور تھا جو ختم ہو گیا فاتحین کا. اب جتنی بھی ریاستیں بن رہی ہیں ان کو ہم نیشن اسٹیٹ کہتے ہیں. تو یہ جو قومی ریاستیں ہیں اس کے اندر برابری کی بنیاد پہ سٹیزن شپ ہوتی ہے, اور وہ جو معاہدہ ہوتا ہے اس سلسلے میں وہ گورن کرتا ہے کہ آپ نان مسلم شہریوں پہ کتنا ٹیکس لگائیں گے.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. There's a question in the chat which says that if two people are in love with each other and they have a relationship before marriage which only comprises of meeting each other and talking, and if there is a transaction of gifts, then Islam has any objection on this relationship or no?
It does not have any objection on this relationship as long as the norms of decency and modesty are maintained, because this is something which is absolutely allowed. I mean, when two hearts get connected through this, I mean, this is a very natural phenomena. All that they need to do is they should just remain follow certain norms and certain etiquette. If that is done, then I mean, they just need to wait for the time when they get married. In between, if they are exchanging gifts or talking in a meaningful way, and also exercising this caution that they don't meet in seclusion, then they just need to lead normal lives.
Thank you. Mansoor Ahmed, you are next.
سر ہم نیشن اسٹیٹ کے دور میں رہ رہے ہیں تو ہم حجاز کو مسلم کے لیے خاص کرتے ہیں, لیکن کیا ہم کسی اور مذہبی ریاست کو یہ رائٹ دیں گے جیسے انڈیا اگر اپنی زمین کو ہندوؤں کے لیے خاص کرنا چاہے؟
بالکل, اگر کوئی کرنا چاہتی ہے اس کو کوئی مذہبی طور پہ اس کو کوئی اس چیز کی ہے تو حق ہے, تو وہ اپنا حق استعمال کر سکتی ہے. یعنی اس کا تعلق تو اس سے ہے نا کہ آپ کس نظریے پہ ہیں. ہم تو اپنا نظریہ یہ بیان کر رہے ہیں کہ اللہ تعالیٰ نے جزیرہ نماء عرب کو یہ حیثیت دی ہے کہ وہ ایک توحید کا مرکز بنے گا, اور وہ خدا کی طرف سے ایک فیصلہ ہے. تو کیا اس طرح کا کوئی فیصلہ اگر کوئی اور یہ رکھتا ہے اور اس کے مطابق وہ اگر عمل کرتا ہے تو ظاہر اس کو آزادی ہے کرنے کی, لیکن پھر ظاہر اس کو اس کے بارے میں دلائل دینے پڑیں گے اور یہ بتانا پڑے گا کہ جو پہلے سے لوگ وہاں موجود ہیں وہ کیا کریں گے. یعنی ہم تو جب قرآن مجید کا یہ فیصلہ بتاتے ہیں تو اس کی ایک پوری تاریخ ہے, اور وہ یہ ہے کہ جزیرہ نماء کو ایک زمانے میں خالی کرا لیا گیا تھا. اس کے بعد مزید مطلب آپ سمجھ لیجیے کہ واپس لوگوں کو آنے نہیں دیا گیا, یعنی خالی کرانے کے بعد آنے نہیں دیا گیا. اب یہ معاملہ اگر کوئی کرے گا تو کیسے کرے گا اور کس بنیاد پہ کرے گا, اور وہ کیا خدائی آپ کہہ لیجیے کوئی تائید ہے. اس وجہ سے یہ سارے سوالات تو پیدا ہوتے ہیں. لیکن نظری طور پہ اگر آپ کوئی قوم یہ کہتی ہے کہ بھئی یہ صرف ہمارا علاقہ ہے تو اس کو حق ہے یہ کہنے کا, لیکن پھر اس کے پیچھے کوئی دلیل کی فورس ہونی چاہیے.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. Noshaba Wasim, you're next.
السلام علیکم سر. سر بھی آپ نے کہا کہ صبر جو ہے وہ گاڈ کنیکشن سے حاصل ہوتا ہے, تو میرا کوشچن آگے یہ ہے کہ گاڈ کنیکشن کے لیے تو ہم قرآن پڑھتے ہیں اور چیزوں پہ, لیکن پھر بھی کئی دفعہ وہ چیز آپ اچیو نہیں کر سکتے جو آپ چاہتے ہیں, لائک صبر ہو گیا یا اپنے غصے پہ قابو پانا. تو پھر ان چیزوں کو کس طرح یا اپنے اندر یہ کوالٹیز لائی جائے؟
یہ ایک کانسٹنٹ اسٹرگل ہے. یہ بات تو صحیح ہے کہ ہر وقت حاصل نہیں ہوتی, لیکن آپ کو زیادہ سے زیادہ کوشش کرنی ہے کہ آپ خدا کے ساتھ تعلق میں اپنے آپ کو مضبوط کریں. خدا سے تعلق جو ہے وہ نماز کے ذریعے سے بھی ہے, وہ قرآن کے ذریعے سے بھی ہے, وہ سوسائٹی کی خدمت کرنے سے بھی ہے, اور وہ اللہ تعالیٰ کے احسانات پر شکر ادا کرنے سے بھی ہے. تو اس کی کئی جہتیں ہیں. یہ صرف قرآن اور نماز پڑھنے تک کنفائنڈ نہیں ہے, بلکہ سوسائٹی کے ساتھ تعلق قائم کرنے میں, اللہ تعالیٰ کے احسانات پر غور کرنے میں, اور اسی طرح سے اس چیز کو دیکھنے میں کہ اللہ تعالیٰ کس طرح سے آپ کی خواہشات کو اس نے ماضی میں پورا کیا, بہت ساری آپ کی دعائیں قبول ہوئیں. تو ایک جو زندہ تعلق خدا سے بنتا ہے, یہ وہ چیز ہے جو آپ کے اندر وہ مضبوطی پیدا کرتی ہے, جس کے بارے میں ہم کہتے ہیں کہ اب اس کا جو تعلق ہے خدا سے وہ بہت مضبوط ہے.
سر لیکن صبر کئی دفعہ نہیں آتا, مطلب اس چیز میں اگر آپ کوشش بھی کر رہے ہوتے ہیں کہ یہ کوالٹی میرے اندر ٹریڈ آئے, تو اس کے لیے کوئی اسٹیپ, یا اگر آپ بعد میں لیکچر اس پہ دینا چاہیں گے اگر ڈیٹیل نہ ہو جائے تو.
نہیں دیکھیے, میں تو عرض کر چکا ہوں نا کہ یہ ایک ایسی چیز ہے کہ جس میں کوشش جاری رکھنی چاہیے. یعنی اگر وہ نہیں بھی آ رہا تو یہ دیکھنا چاہیے کہ کیا ہمارے کوئی کانسیپٹ درست نہیں ہے. یعنی بعض دفعہ ایسا ہوتا ہے کہ ہم ایک چیز چاہ رہے ہوتے ہیں کہ وہ ہمارے مطابق ہو, اور جب وہ نہیں ہو رہی ہوتی تو ہم بے صبرا پن دکھاتے ہیں. تو اس میں یہ دیکھنا چاہیے کہ بہت ساری چیزیں اللہ تعالیٰ آپ کی بہتری کے لیے آپ کے مطابق نہیں کرتے. اگر آپ کو یہ ایمان ہے اللہ تعالیٰ پر, تو یہ اس پر ایمان ہی کا تقاضا ہے کہ اگر کچھ آپ کی خواہشات اور کچھ مرضیات پوری نہیں ہو رہی ہیں, زندگی اس طرح سے نہیں چل رہی جیسے آپ چاہ رہی ہیں, تو اس کے پیچھے کوئی حکمت ایسی ہے جو ہم فی الحال نہیں سمجھ رہے, लेकिन वो खुदा ने उसमें कोई बेहतरी रखी हुई है। तो यहाँ पे भी खुदा पर एतमाद और तवक्कुल है जिसको आपने अपने अंदर पैदा करना है।
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. Amin, Masood, you can ask your question now.
Dr. Sahab, I just wanted to have clarification between zakat and taxes. Because in early days, there wasn't any sort of taxes being imposed on the Muslims and zakat was made compulsory. But now, I mean, we are spending or we are giving tax on property, on different items, valuables, immovable or movable. So with that, if we have to give zakat, so how would we, have balance in the percentage of how much money we are supposed to give where and how?
So you see, we have to understand that zakat has two facets. One, it is a worship ritual, and two, it is the only tax which a Muslim government can impose without the consent of its citizens, Muslim citizens. So basically, zakat is a tax. And the reason that zakat is given is not just to help the poor, as is generally understood. It is basically given to the state to run the state, is to in a way that it caters for the needs of the deprived and the underprivileged, and at the same time provides the citizens with facilities like hospitals and roads and all public service areas that we need to have. So basically, zakat is the only tax. And today, if you are paying taxes which exceed your zakat liability, then you should consider that your zakat has been paid already. So in this regard, I mean, there are a lot of details, and just recently I had a very detailed talk on this, and maybe you can listen to that, because we have also to understand that it's not just 2.5% of zakat that we have to pay, which we generally think is the only percentage. Other than that, there are other brackets of zakat like 5% and 10% also that have to be paid. So to sum up, zakat is basically on savings, and it is also on income. So for savings, you have to pay it once a year, and for income, you pay it every time you get that income, and that is around 10%. So having said that, once you calculate your zakat liability, you can calculate all the taxes that you pay, like property tax, income tax, wealth tax, sales tax, and withholding tax, and all kinds of taxes that we give. And we can subtract that from the zakat liability. And if we are paying more taxes, then of course we have already paid our zakat. In fact, the negative balance can carry forward for the next year as well.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. There's a follow-up question in the chat which says, if we have savings in the bank or Islamic mutual funds which generate profit and a 10 to 15% tax is deducted on it, which is being passed on to the government, can this tax be deducted as and compensated as zakat?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shehzad. This is all for today. There are a few hands raised, but we will take their questions tomorrow, inshallah. See you all tomorrow. Allah Hafiz.
Inshallah.